Hello there, dear listeners, and welcome to a very special Halloween edition of Legal Lore, where law meets the supernatural. I'm your host, Debra Lightfritz, and today I am going to have Amanda Lowe, Vice President, Corporate Counsel. Legally Blonde Barbie will give us some employment law updates just in time for Halloween. Can I drive a stick? Why, yes, darling, I certainly can. Welcome to the Halloween edition. Amanda, how are you? You look adorable. My little blonde Barbie. And she really
Thanks,
is in
Deb,
real
for
life,
having
too.
me.
She is a living doll. So, Mandy, before we get started, can you just give us a little bio on yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you really are.
Sure. Well, I've been a lawyer for, oh gosh, too many years to count, but I started as a prosecutor for 20 years, prosecuting crime in Franklin County, Ohio. And then I moved over to the Reserves Network, which has always been home, but came over full time 3 years ago, handling all sorts of contracts and employment law and all sorts of, I basically am the emergency help button for everyone in the company.
Yeah.
And staffing law is interesting because it's kind of two level. You've got, your internal employees and all the temporaries. We put over 4,000 people to work every week. So it's fabulous to be on the forefront of that exciting industry and to make sure we're doing everything right out in the field and protecting our workers.
Okay, well, thank you, Mandy. And on today's Gold Mines podcast, we're here to unravel the mysteries that lurk in the legal world while we celebrate again the spookiest time of the year. So let's get into some really good stuff with you. So let's talk about workplace updates on pregnancy and lactation rights. And where are we at with those breastfeeding mothers?
Sure. Well, 2003 in general has just been a banner year for women. Blockbuster Barbie movie has taken the world by storm. The federal government has given us both the Pump Act and the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. Everyone knows Taylor Swift has taken ownership of music rights, her movie rights, and become such an influence that even the Fed has taken note of her and how she can help local economies. So women are just really taking the world by storm, Deb. It's an exciting year.
Yay, women power.
So finally, the government is caught up to, realities that women face in the workplace and some difficulties. So pregnancy and lactation rights are really a hot button item right now. And it's really exciting, being a mother, having gone through these issues, it's great to see the government taking steps to protect women in the workplace. The Pump Act in particular, that's a new federal law protecting the right of new mothers to express their breast milk for their infants through unlimited breaks during the workday. They must be provided with a clean private location that's not a bathroom. I know in the past it's been horrible. Women have been just told, go pump in the bathroom, and it's a disgusting situation for them and their children. So luckily this is, a new law that's made to protect their rights under that. In general, for it's unpaid time. However, the nursing employee must be completely relieved of their duties. If you're telling them to go work while they're pumping, then they must be paid for that time. So it's really a good thing for society in general. It's a great law that we now have on the books. There's also the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. This is another new development. And this is basically, it's sort of like the ADA, gosh, sorry.
No,
but
hey.
it's an extension of the ADA. So it's
Okay.
The provisions are based on the ADA, but in the PWFA, the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, the employer may temporarily have to eliminate an essential job function. That's not the case for the ADA. That's the American with Disabilities Act. So if you think back to school in the Venn diagrams, if you're pregnant, then you might fall under the ADA, but not everybody in the ADA falls under the PWFA. So it just gives a little bit more protection. It protects things like you can't discriminate against somebody just because they're pregnant. You can't say you don't want to hire them because you don't want to accommodate them being pregnant. That's obviously unfair.
Right.
So now that's on the books. That's against the law. And basically it just makes employers accommodate the employees' temporarily limitations resulting from pregnancy or pregnancy-related conditions, unless doing so would be an undue hardship. So that's what the term that everybody knows from disability accommodations is the undue hardship. So here it's just saying, hey, I recognize you're pregnant. It's a temporary limitation in your abilities. What can I do as your employer to ensure that you can continue to do this job? Whether that be, you know, increased bathroom breaks or having a stool to sit on while you're working, those sort of common sense accommodations really let our pregnant workers continue the important jobs that they're doing out there every day.
Well, I think that's awesome because as a mother of mid 40s and 45-year-old, 2 children, you would not believe, Amanda, what I had to go through as a nursing mother back then. And I worked, and it was crazy. So I'm over the moon that this is happening. So, Amanda, can I ask you, which of the following violate PWFA?
Pop quiz. I'm ready for you.
Okay, so refusing to make reasonable accommodations for known limitation related to pregnancy or pregnancy-related condition when the accommodation would not be undue hardship. Or B, requiring an employee to accept a reasonable accommodation that was not arrived at using the interactive process. Or C, taking adverse action against an employee because she sought a reasonable accommodation for pregnancy or pregnancy-related condition. Or D, patting the tummy of a pregnant employee without being asked to do so and saying, "ah." Or E, teasing a pregnant employee in her 8th month about how huge she's become. Or F, asking a pregnant employee that what her due date is and what she is going to name the baby. Or G, all of the above. Or H, A, B, and C.
Deb, that's a fabulous question, and I think it really highlights the important parts of this law. And the answer here is that A, B, and C are going to violate the PWFA. You can't refuse to make an accommodation, a reasonable accommodation, for a pregnant woman or someone who's suffering pregnancy-related conditions when it's not going to be an undue hardship. As long as it's not an undue hardship, then let's accommodate, right?
Right.
So that would be A. So clearly refusing would be a violation of the law. B would also be a violation of a law. You have to go through the interactive process, just like the ADA. If someone comes to you and says, I'm pregnant, or I have a pregnancy-related condition, I need an accommodation, then have that conversation with them. It's, you know, it's not going to take much time out of your day, and it's your legal and moral obligation to help her try to continue that job. So just have that accommodation, go through that process. If you don't find a solution, then you don't find a solution, but you have to go through the process. And finally, C would obviously be against the law. You cannot take adverse action against a pregnant employee just because she sought accommodation. So, you know, clearly you don't want to discriminate against somebody or take action against them just for asking for that help that they may need for that position. You may not, just common sense wise, I would not suggest patting the tummy of a pregnant employee without being asked to do so.
You might get slapped.
Exactly, or tease them about becoming huge. So you might face other more than legal ramifications for doing those items.
Absolutely, Mandy. So let's get on the topic for just a minute about the disability accommodations in general. Are you legally required to engage in any particular process under the Disabilities Act?
You do. And this has always been the case. You have to go through the interactive process to try to identify with that employee any potential accommodations to help them do their job duties. However, there's been some case law recently that says that you aren't legally required to be strong-armed into an accommodation that's not reasonable. In one case that hit the news recently, an employee basically wanted the employer to create a whole new position for him as the accommodation, and logically so, the court said, no, that's not reasonable. The employer should not have to create an entire new position for you to accommodate you. So that request was denied. So, in general, the lesson here is just, of course, you want to carefully consider all accommodation requests and go through that interactive process. But as an employer, don't freak out. It doesn't mean that you have to agree to something that's unworkable or that's going to put an undue burden on other members of your staff.
Now, Mandy, this is no secret. It's on every channel, everybody's mind right now with the things that are going on over in Israel. And so as far as accommodations for religious practices or even, harassment in the workplace because of religious practices, can you elaborate on some of the law there for us, please?
Sure. And this has been a very recent and very big change in the law. The court just heard a recent case called Groff, and basically invigorated the employer's duty to accommodate religious practices. Usually the employer was given a lot of leeway in that area, but now the court said, hey, no, you really need to dig in here, and the employer must show that the accommodation is not just going to disrupt the business, it is going to substantially add costs or disruption to the business. So the substantial is the key thing here. An employer is going to have to show now, if an employee requests a religious accommodation, the employer really has to go through that process and not just say, oh yeah, it's going to be inconvenient for us. They really have to create a showing that it's going to be a substantial cost or disruption to their business if they were not to accommodate that request. Wow. So again, it comes down to that interactive process. You want to just try in good faith to accommodate everything that you can, unless it's just, substantially too expensive or disruptive to do so.
Well, Mandy, I'm sure you and I could go on here for probably a whole day on addressing legal issues, but I've about ran out of time. So I would like you to end this podcast today with maybe a lesson that you could give us.
Sure. Well, I think, in general, employers, you want to be diligent and be aware of these legal updates, make sure you're in compliance, but most importantly, be respectful of your employees, especially your females in the workplace who are going through some issues that you may or may not be familiar with. And remember Barbie's motto, you can be anything. So just be respectful in the workplace, and hopefully the rest takes care of itself.
Oh, that's so cool. Thank you. So, as you might remember, Mandy, I end all of my Gold Mines podcasts with a Debraism. And here it is. Change can be scary, but what is scarier is allowing fear to stop you from growing and progressing. Always give 100%, except when it comes to giving blood. Happy Halloween, Mandy.
Oh, you too.
Like us.
Thank you.
Follow us and subscribe to the Gold Mines podcast channel. We are on YouTube and many social media sites. Mandy, thank you. What a great podcast.
Thanks, Deb. Take care.
You too.